Where are you going? Where are you telling me about? Because I'm ready to get on the road again,
Okay.
and I don't know where to go.
Well, the place I've been to most in the world is Bali,
Bali,
Indonesia.
right?
And I've been there maybe, I don't know, 13, 14 times, I guess, over the years. First time was in 1979, and the most recent was last year,
Now
2023.
I went last year,
Right.
and I don't think I give it a fair crack of the whip because I'd just come back from England, and I'd been around Europe, and my dad wasn't in the best of moods, and my
Right.
daughter Sophia had enough. She just wanted to be home.
Right.
But my wife came and met me,
Yep.
and we went to Bali as a family together.
Right.
But I think the kids were just travel weary.
Right.
So if you could sell me on the idea of where you went in 71 and where you went last year,
79.
79,
Yeah.
and how it's changed. Yeah.
Um, I spent most of my time last year in a place called Ubud, which is a village in central Bali. It's famous for arts and music and dance and
Mm.
all manner of things artistic. Um, when I first went to Ubud, which was 1979, it was a sleepy little village. I think there might have been street lights, but most of the houses didn't have electricity. It was just like a little country town. But there were lots of little workshops, artist workshops, where painters and wood carvers and various artists would
Would you
create their beautiful handicrafts.
now? I was there
Yeah,
in last year,
right.
and I'd gone there from Kuta,
Mm,
which is awful,
yeah,
awful.
Kuta wasn't that beautiful even in '79. It was overrun with
So
tourists.
were there loads of bogans there in 79?
Oh yeah, even
So
'79.
right, so
Yeah,
it's I saw a woman that must have been in her 60s, and I have never seen a woman I felt so sorry for in my entire life. She was just caked up to eyeballs in makeup,
right,
smoking a cig,
right.
and she had a bottle of beer walking down the street, going out to try and pick up some fella. I thought, oof, yeah.
Yeah,
It looked she looked rough, and then I walked like a pedestrianised place, and there were bars on each side
yeah,
which Australians ran,
yeah.
and there were a lot of a lot of, what's the Australian band, Powderfinger.
Yeah, Powderfinger.
Powderfinger, a
Yeah,
lot of that blaring out, which they're not even a good band.
right.
So we
And
had
they
two.
certainly have no connection to Bali.
No, no. So we had 2 days there, but we were ready. We wanted to go early.
Right.
But so even it was shite back then. It was rubbish back. Has it got any redeeming features,
It was
Kuta?
more Balinese back then. You could actually see Balinese dance and
Mm,
gamelan in Kuta back in '79.
mm.
Um, but it was still very touristy in 1979. There were still bars and not to the extent there are now. But it was very busy. Lots of young Australians on motorbikes and a kind of a surf culture. I mean, it's a surfing beach.
So if you go back before 79,
Yeah.
when did the white man start turning up from Australia?
Ooh, from Australia. Not sure. There was a kind of a tourist boom in Bali in the 1930s when the first artists
Before
came
Second
in.
World War?
Yeah,
Really?
that's when the first artists came in and established studios. And this was around Ubud especially.
Mm,
So that goes right back to the 30s. Some of
wow.
them were Dutch, some of them were Spanish from various countries. But the modern tourist boom, probably early '70s, late '60s, early '70s, about the time the hippies went out on the trail to discover the world.
Because I were looking back at and seeing when the Brits started fucking up Spain, and that
Oh,
would have been around the 60s.
mm,
Certainly not the 50s.
right.
So that would have been, so it'd have been about the same time.
Yeah,
When
I,
I was
I would
walking
guess.
round Kuta, I was thinking this is Benidorm.
Right.
There didn't seem to be any high rises. I think I just had my head down because I was so annoyed with the place.
Right.
I don't know if there are any high rises, but yeah, it seemed to be a place that you don't want to spend the entire holiday.
Right.
But Ubud,
Is Benidorm a real Spanish name? It seems like it's a combination of Beni from the Spanish and dorm as in dormitory from the English.
yeah. Well, when I first heard that name as a kid,
Right,
I was thinking dormer bungalow, which is
right,
a one floored house with a dorm on the top.
right.
But I've been there on a holiday. I've been there driving through it, and it's the very very worst of British culture
Right.
abroad because they don't want to do anything. And if you just have you been?
No, not to that part of Spain.
If you face the beach,
Yeah,
that front is just it's British. But if you turn around, you've got these wonderful mountains
yeah,
and like sheer peaks that you can, and I was talking to a couple and said, "Oh, have you been to mountains? Where?" And just turned around. They didn't even know there were mountains around
right,
Benidorm.
right.
But that's what Kuta reminded me of. Now, I only went to Kuta and Ubud.
Right.
So you went to Ubud in the 70s and you went in 2023
Yeah.
when I did.
Right.
A lot of it seemed to thin out the chavs a bit. The
Yeah.
Bogans did
Yeah.
Ubud.
Yeah.
But they were still there.
They're still
But
there now.
more kind of the hippies.
Yeah.
The hippies and the artsy lot.
It's much more of an alternative
Yeah.
community. Ubud. A lot of people who live in Bali actually live in Ubud.
So you would feel more at home there than anywhere else in Bali.
Yeah. Although Kuta now has become this kind of circular traffic jam, which it never was before. Very few tourists drove cars in '79. I mean, people went out on motorbikes if they were motorized at all, or they just took a BMO, a minibus, which is the kind of public transport in the villages. So now you've got everybody driving cars and hiring drivers and driving cars.
Yeah.
The roads are just absolutely clogged now.
That's what we did. They've got a Grab app, which is like an Uber food, Uber Eats,
right?
And you just get that on your phone, and you can order a lift, food, anything.
Right.
Anything can get brought to your door.
Yeah.
Who did you go with in last year?
I went with my girlfriend at the time and her daughter and her son, who was actually working in Java, came to meet us.
Right. So
it was like a family reunion.
The times that you've been with by yourself.
Yep.
With various girlfriends.
I've
You're
never been by myself.
So your family when they were young?
I never travel alone. I always travel with somebody.
Right. So
and usually a beautiful young woman, if possible.
Well, it always helps, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It always helps.
Yeah.
So you went there when your kids were young?
Yeah.
And have you been there when your kids have been older?
Let me think about that. I think the last time I went to Bali with my kids they were still probably junior high school, probably elementary.
Last time you went with them?
Yeah.
And what were they?
And since then, Amy, my daughter, she's been a few times independently with school friends.
And is she an Ubud fan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think when she went with her friends they did kind of at the end of high school. Schoolies, I think they call it. At the end of high school, they stayed on the coast. I think they were in Legian or something like that. I mean, not Kuta, but somewhere in that south coast region.
If I think of Kuta to Ubud, it's just a straight north run, isn't it?
It is.
It's straight north. Now, I wanted to go to the north coast,
right,
of Bali.
Yeah.
But my wife said, "Look, the kids have travelled enough. Let's just rest as heads here, and then go back to Kuta, go back to the airport for the flight."
Right.
And I went, "All right, fair enough." And it were all right. It were relaxing. We found a nice place, kind of a spa place.
Yep.
And it were nice.
How long were you there for?
A week.
Okay.
8 days. Did you go? Have you been all over the island?
I've been all over, north, south, east, west.
Right. This is what I need to do, because it seems to me, if Kuta is Bangkok, Ubud is Chiang Mai. Would I be right in describing it like that?
Right. And outside of those two centres, there are a whole lot of very natural landscapes and forests and volcanoes and small villages.
See, that's what I wanted.
Fishing villages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You need to basically jump in a car or on a motorbike and just go exploring and do it independently. without a guide.
So when you were traveling with other people,
Yeah,
now were these were the other people that you were with, they were all up for doing that?
sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
explorers.
Yeah. You see, I think Jean's up for it, but the females in my family
Mm,
are ones for just relaxing.
right.
Yeah.
They want a pool and a nice hotel.
Yeah. But my son, he's up for all that hiking and walking
Right.
and stuff like that. We went to the rice paddies again north of Ubud.
Okay.
But again, tourist trap. I'm sure I could have found places like that I'd probably never seen many foreigners.
Those rice terraces in '79, there was nothing there basically. You just rode along the road and there it was.
Yeah,
There were no cafes, no
yeah,
tourist
yeah, yeah,
shops, no
yeah.
guides, no nothing. It was just open. You could just walk through the fields. You could park your motorbike beside the road and just walk through the fields.
Wow.
Now it's almost like guided tours
Yeah, it
going on
well,
there.
yeah, it basically was that.
Yeah,
Where as soon as we got the Uber up there,
right.
you get out at that rice terrace entrance place, and you've
Yeah,
got to pay to go in.
yeah, I know.
You're like, what is a fucking rice terrace?
Yeah,
And then
that's all changed.
asked if you wanted a guide, and we just walked around. It's a rice terrace.
Yeah, you don't need a guide. You
Yeah.
can see everything there. You know where you want to go, and you
Mm.
just go there.
So when for you, so you obviously well 80s, 90s, 2000s. When would it have changed for you?
I had a gap where I didn't go there for about 10 years between maybe the 90s and the 2010s,
Mm.
10, 15 years maybe. When I went back in the 2010s, I started to think, wow, this is getting really busy.
Got worse.
It just got traffic jammed,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
There were more people, there were more cars. Um, it had it had become almost like a big city
yeah,
in a very small space. I mean,
yeah.
it's still a town by definition, but it had almost developed into a big city.
So can I still find those gems out of them two big major cities then, where there's not going to be
You can
many
find
folk?
you can find quieter places just outside of Ubud. There's
Right.
just south of Ubud. There's a village called Paliatan, which
Mm.
is a dance center. That's relatively quiet
Yeah.
compared to Ubud. I mean, it does have a main road through it, but it's relatively quiet. There's lots of little dance studios and gamelan groups and things like that.
And the cost, right? The cost, I thought, because the yen's on its ass at the moment.
Yeah.
So I thought it wasn't pricey. It was definitely cheaper than here,
Mm,
but it wasn't as cheap as I thought it was going to be.
right. It used to be incredibly cheap. It was one of the cheapest places in Asia. It was on the same level as India
Really?
at one stage.
So when you first started going there, how much were you living on a day?
Um, I did one long trip which started in Bali and it ended in Nepal. That was
Yeah.
13 months, and I averaged $5 a day
The whole trip?
the whole trip.
Wow.
Yeah, but there were some places that were much more expensive. Malaysia and Thailand
Yeah.
were much more expensive. India, Nepal, Indonesia were much cheaper.
Right. So going for you kicked off in Bali.
Yeah.
That trip.
Yeah.
Wow. So what were you doing then? Going across Bali, Sumatra?
Bali, Java, Sumatra, up to Malaysia, through Thailand, Burma as it was called then,
Yeah.
and then all over India, and finished in Nepal,
Wow.
finished in the Himalayas.
So started in, you see, when I did my world trip, I started in Southeast Asia, and that was the best part.
Right.
And I should have done it opposite way around. But starting in Bali and finishing in Nepal,
Yeah.
did you start off with the best, do you think?
I think I started and finished with the best. Probably
Really?
the two 5-star locations were Bali and Nepal.
So Thailand and Malaysia were a bit of a letdown.
Not a letdown, but Malaysia was much more developed than
Yeah.
other places. So, a little more modernized, which was, I was traveling with an Australian girlfriend. We were looking for traditions and
Yeah.
for artistic places, traditional places, village life,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. And we'd just come from Sumatra. We'd been staying in Lake Toba,
Yep.
which is a beautiful crater lake, Batak people, Christian culture. So we'd come from a very, very small village environment, and
Mm.
we'd ended up in Georgetown, Penang,
Yeah.
which is a big city.
So you'd have
So
taken the boat across the straits, wouldn't you?
no, we flew.
Did you fly?
Yeah, we did occasional flights.
Mm.
Flights weren't that much more expensive than boats, actually,
Yeah,
and much more convenient.
I stayed in one of those Lake Maninjo.
Okay.
Still remains one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life.
Right.
Ever. And it was the same as what it says, an old volcano that's just filled up with water. Do you call them a caldera?
Caldera, yeah.
Is that what they're called?
If it's a lake, no. Caldera is a large crater area, and there may be other volcanoes within the volcano. So a caldera is just like a large volcanic space with a large crater around the outside.
Yeah, I remember going down that, and I think there was about 30 or 40 hairpin bends.
That sounds familiar.
And you had the countdown as you went down.
Right.
And the monkeys knew where the buses and the cars slowed down and would throw the shit out.
Right.
A driver is not going to, well, for some reason, a driver's not going to throw his shit out when he's driving straight. The monkeys knew this.
Right.
So they're throwing your shit out when he slowed down, and the monkeys were just on each hairpin bend.
Right.
So as soon as anything got thrown out, they were straight on it.
Right.
It's amazing. Amazing. But yeah, I stayed in that small village like you did for about a week.
Yep.
And the whole time itself just slowed down.
Right.
The locals would bring us weed. You wrote in a book how much you've eaten, and then you just paid at the end of the week.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, we stayed on Samosir Island, which is an island in the middle of Lake Toba.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, very, very relaxed. Sounds very similar.
I mean, were you smoking weed while you were there?
Yeah.
And were they more relaxed? Because when you read about the Bali Nine, were they more relaxed about it then?
In that particular place, yeah.
Right. Okay.
In other places, you had to be very careful.
Yeah, because
that particular place was quite infamous for weed. So
the weed I was smoking there was very mild, because I'm not a weed smoker at all. It makes me paranoid. But I would smoke it and then start thinking, "Fucking hell, if the police come, I'm fucked." That's what I would think. But it wasn't that strong to get me worried.
Right.
But yeah, I was certainly worried about the police, but not for 1 week in Maninjo. I didn't see one policeman.
Right.
Not one. But I loved it there. Now, I don't know if this is a thing to Sumatra, but it seemed to be like a pasty, a Cornish pasty that I would walk into. So we were kind of out of the village, and we'd walk into the village, and then this tiny Indonesian woman would make us like a calzone pasty thing with meat and stuff in.
Interesting.
I don't know.
I don't think I ever had something like that. It might have been a specialty of that area.
Maybe they were just making it for backpackers that were coming in. But
possibly. Yeah.
That's the one dish I remember. Now, Indonesian food, even last year, I didn't have any standout meals.
Right.
I don't know what were you?
Bali has a very, very international cuisine. I mean, you can get anything in Bali. They have pizzerias. Yeah. They have authentic Balinese food, Indonesian food, Chinese. I mean, you can eat just about anything you want to, in Ubud especially. A lot of variations. I thought the food was very good in Bali, but I had a fairly good idea of where I was going to eat. I have some favourite restaurants where they have really good food.
So even back then in the 70s and 80s, there were no
back in
Delhi belly or all like that then?
Bali.
You won't get in the shits or
Bali belly was... after 3 days, I had Bali belly.
Really? Is that what it's called there?
In Kuta, Bali belly, yeah.
Just in Kuta?
Yeah, although I had to watch my stomach. I got kind of mild stomach problems in a lot of different places. I probably did in Ubud as well.
Yeah.
It's just getting used to new bugs, basically. Yeah, but that's part of traveling.
Yeah.
That's part of traveling in tropical countries. You're definitely going to get stomach problems. I think that's standard for everybody.
I think you've definitely got to roll that dice.
Yeah.
You've got to roll that dice with street vendors. You've got to roll that dice with the dirty restaurants, because I think even if you do get, I mean, I had salmonella in Bolivia, but I rolled the dice that many times over that year or 13 months, like you did.
Right.
I only got sick twice.
Right.
And I had some amazing meals because after the first week, I just thought, fuck it. If I'm going to get sick, I'm going to get sick.
Yeah.
And that year, 14, 15 months I travelled, I had some of the best meals I've ever had in my entire life. And that was just a case of rolling the dice. And I've told you before, Bourdain were just getting famous. And you were seeing him in Vietnam just sitting at a roadside barbecue and eating sausage.
Right.
You think, well, what's happening to him? And it were him that said, yeah, just roll the dice, and if you get sick, you get sick, but you're not going to get sick every time.
Yeah. But, you know, there are things you can do. You can be cautious. I found that street stalls were my downfall.
Yeah.
When I was in India, samosas, which are deep fried in oil, and probably the oil's been used 100 times. It's not particularly clean. I used to get sick more often than not when I ate samosas from a street stall. I always thought it was better to spend a little bit more on food, on restaurants, and a little bit, maybe save a little bit on accommodation and invest the savings in
India,
in food, in India especially.
Right.
Yeah, I got sick the second day I was in India, and badly sick.
Yeah.
From going to a very, very cheap restaurant and thinking, oh, we're in India now, it's so cheap, it's going to be wonderful. And the next day I'm like, I'm not going back to that restaurant again.
So getting into India, could you have quite easily lived on less than $5?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's $5 for accommodation, food, transport, and a little bit of leftover cash for buying local crafts and cloth and things like that.
I could never budget myself. If I wanted to do something, I'd just go and do it.
Right.
But I don't really look at what I'm spending.
Yeah.
But I don't do anything out of the ordinary. I can sit on a bus and look out of a window all day and be more than happy doing that.
Yeah.
More than happy.
And that's a very cheap day when you consider the price of the bus ticket.
But then especially when I was traveling around Vietnam, I would bus it in the night, then you don't have to pay for a hotel room.
Yeah.
So you'd sleep on the bus instead.
Sure.
So I picked up that tip.
Yeah, well, that's the same in India with the trains. You take a 36-hour journey on the train, and I had one journey which was 40-something hours, and it was 2 nights.
Yeah. In India?
Yeah.
Jesus.
I think it was from Bombay across to Madras and then back across to Trivandrum, because there's no line.
There's no direct?
It was kind of, that's as direct as you go. There's no line running down the west coast. You had to cross to the east coast and then back to the west coast.
Any train lines in Bali?
No, there's no trains.
No trains?
Bali. No. It's just bus.
Yeah, it's just buses and cars, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there are trains in Java. From what I remember, no. Actually, I don't think we took trains anywhere. I think there are possibly trains in Java, but we traveled by bus everywhere, right through Bali, Java, Sumatra. It was all bus travel.
Did you get any crime? Did you experience any crime in Bali?
No, none at all.
None. The length of Indonesia, nothing.
No, nothing at all.
No bandits.
No.
Shoplifting. No. Wow.
Nothing at all. Indonesia was a very safe place.
Yeah, and I've found that
Bali especially was a very safe place.
Yeah, these and again, kids running about, you're not worried about them in the slightest.
No.
Once you're out of Kuta,
right?
I mean, in Kuta, you were having to keep an eye on Australians, but
right.
Once we were out towards Ubud and then around that area, I'm just going to bother the kids there.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't travelled with young kids for a long time, but even when I did, kids kind of attracted people. You know, the locals wanted to see the kids, and wanted to meet the kids.
And
wanted their kids to meet the kids.
Yeah.
So it was actually a good way to get closer to the locals. You had that.
It does break the ice.
Common.
It does break the ice. I remember in Vietnam, you would have had this before as well. Even when you didn't have kids, Vietnam, Malaysia especially,
Right.
Cambodia, people would just come up and have a photograph taken with you,
Yeah.
just because you're white.
Right.
Now, I arrived in Vietnam in Hanoi, waiting for Shima to come from Japan after being in England.
Right.
And the three of us, because she'd not arrived, went to a restaurant. And then a couple at the other table just brought their child over, sat him down, and that kid were eating with us while they ate with. So she just left him to eat with us.
Wow.
Like, what?
Interesting.
I just thought I was some sort of Gary Glitter type. And
Yeah.
they were just bringing, and then just left the kid. And Sophia and Jean were tiny then, but they were just looking at me. What the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. So how old was the kid?
Well, Jean were 3, and so Jean were 3. Sophia must have been 5 or 6, and this kid were probably in between pair of them.
Wow.
But just to drop your kid at
Yeah.
a random foreigner's table and say, "Oh, I'm just sat over there." All right.
They just wanted the kids to get
Yeah,
together. I
yeah.
guess. Just that experience of being with foreign children.
But could you imagine that would never happen in Australia or in the
No.
UK, would it?
Absolutely not.
And it's just that different way of the way that they treat foreigners that come in. We would never be that friendly.
Where exactly were you? Was it outside the city? Obviously.
It was on the outskirts of the city,
Yeah.
but it was still pretty busy.
Yeah.
There were no foreigners.
Right.
Definitely no foreigners. But it was just one of those buffet style restaurants.
Uh-huh.
You know, where you go up and just fill up your.
Yeah.
And we sat down, and then this chair were pushed in between Sophia and Jean.
Right.
I thought, no, it's only the three of us. And she just got a kid and just, we're over there. Because, I was thinking, do they think I'm going to buy this kid and I'm some sort of Gary Glitter? Because I'd got 2 kids with me. One of them Jean looks more Asian than Sophia.
Right.
Now, do they think I'm some sort of degenerate? Because that is, I don't know if that's that's happened with you before, but that's the first time it's happened with me.
I've never experienced that.
No,
that's most unusual.
But again, the fact that they trust you.
Yeah.
And you don't get that in.
Well, I mean, they're there. It's not like you're going to drag the kid away.
Mm.
They're in the restaurant and they'll keep an eye on what's going on.
Now although we were in Bali and the roads are absolute madness, not once did I see an accident.
Yeah.
Did you ever get it?
No.
See an accident?
I was involved in an accident, actually. I was in Klungkung, which is out in the east of Bali, on the way back from. I'd climbed Agung. I'd been to the top of the highest volcano, and I was driving back to Ubud, and I was in a Jimny, like a little kind of a mini Jeep, and Klungkung's got this one-way system. It's really confusing, and I was kind of coming up to a kind of a T intersection. I thought I was going straight, and then I suddenly saw a sign saying Ubud to the right.
Yeah.
And without looking in my mirror, I turned to the right and whack into the side of the Jimny, 2 boys on a motorbike.
Really?
And I looked in my mirror and they're kind of rolling on the road behind me, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? This is going to be terrible. Anyway, the boys kind of picked themselves up and wheeled the bike. I pulled over to the side of the road. A crowd gathered almost immediately. And luckily the boys weren't injured. Yeah. They were okay.
Did they rinse you for money?
Their bike was damaged, and I could see the damage on the bike. Yeah, one of the guys on the side of the road kind of took over the negotiations. And a crowd formed, and I said, look, I know it's my fault. Yeah. It was my fault. I said, I'm happy to pay for the damage of the motorbike. And the guy asked the kids how much it would cost to repair, and they looked and probably overcharged me. It was like 100,000 rupees, something like that. Not a huge amount of money. And I didn't have the money on me. So I said, look, I'll give you half the money. Yeah. Give me your address. I'll send you the rest. I'll give you my address, and you can see my license, etc. So we exchanged details. Yeah. I said, look, you can trust me. I'm really sorry it happened. I will send you the rest of the money. which I did. So we eventually came to an agreement that half would be paid now and half later. And then when I took the Jimny back to the owner, it was of course damaged on the side.
Yeah.
That cost me another 100K. It turned out to be quite an expensive accident.
100 rupiah is what in real money?
I think it was about 2,000 to $1. So 100 thou was about $50.
$50.
Yeah.
Well, it's not much in the real world, is
It's
it?
not much in the real world. It was quite a sum of money in Bali at the time.
If you'd have done that in China, you'd have been paying for months.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
You'd have been paying for months.
I'm sure.
But
this was quite a long time ago. It was probably back in the 90s, I guess.
So when you did that and they saw you were white,
there
was no violence going to be happening then, no?
Not in Bali, no. Bali's not that kind of place. It's a Hindu culture. They're very gentle people.
Yeah.
It's a lovely culture, actually.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about Bali, if you go west, as soon as you get to Java and Sumatra, you're in Islamic culture, which is much more segregated, men and women.
Yeah.
I think Bali's because of the Hindu base, it's a softer culture. It's got a much more gentle feeling, a little bit like Japan because of the Buddhist culture, has a more gentle aura, I think.
Compared to China.
Yeah.
I fell in love almost straight away with Sumatra. I don't know if it's Kuta that ruined Bali for me.
Yeah.
Because you've got to fly into there, really, haven't you? Unless you're coming overland from somewhere else.
Yeah.
You've got to fly into there, and as soon as you were at the airport, it just seemed to be rather large Western Australians that are just there to take the piss.
Yeah, it's almost like the airport's an extension of Kuta because it's very, very close.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people who are flying into that airport are going to Kuta or Legian or that kind of intensely developed tourist strip along the.
But like you said, as soon as you get out of Kuta, it was just relaxation time.
Yeah.
When will you be going back?
Don't have any plans at the moment, but over the next couple of years, probably. I do tend to go there every 2 or 3 years.
See, I would like to go back, but there's so many other places that I want to take the kids.
Right.
And after, I'm sure if we'd have gone there first and then gone back to the UK, they'd have enjoyed it more.
Right.
But we sort of had that as the last push-up.
Yeah.
And
everyone was travel weary by
that time. Everybody had had enough.
Yeah.
And because we'd stayed in Singapore for 3 days. Singapore is fucking expensive now.
Yeah.
It was almost more expensive than the rest of Southeast Asia, but fuck me, we were paying 27,000 yen a night for something that was awful.
Wow.
Yeah, it is super expensive now.
Singapore's the richest country in Asia, richer than Brunei now, and therefore
really,
yeah, it's top 10 in the world. It's one of the 10 richest, and therefore one of the 10 most expensive cities in the world.
I didn't think it was going to be that expensive, and it was ridiculous how expensive it was for what you got as well.
Right.
So to the point where I don't think I will be going there again until the yen gets a bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it won't. If it had been cheaper, it'd have probably been a bit better. But it was just so expensive, and you didn't get much for your money.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times have you been there.
Singapore, only once.
Yeah. I'm flying through there again on the way home, but I'm not leaving the airport.
Right.
I'm gonna go out because I'm only going with Jean this time. We're gonna go out and have a look around Singapore again, but I'm just gonna get the lounge.
Right.
I'm just gonna get the lounge.
Yep.
Right. Last question.
Yeah.
Next place that you're going? Have you got out booked? Are you thinking of going anywhere?
I don't have any plans,
really?
Actually. Yeah.
So you're staying put in Japan for the foreseeable future?
For the summer, yeah. I don't usually travel in summer because, we live near the beach.
There's no reason to.
There's beach houses on the beach. There's, there's a lot of things happening here. So no, I don't have any specific plans at the moment.
Yeah.
But I do have a plan to travel with my daughter to Nepal, probably October, November.
Now that to me, because you went to Vietnam with your daughter
Yeah,
last year, 2 years ago.
last year.
Last year, how long for?
We were there about almost 2 weeks.
Right, now Nepal doesn't seem like a just about 2 weeks place to go.
No, although we're just going to go to one area. We'll fly into Kathmandu as
Yeah.
everybody does. We'll go across to Pokhara, which is west of Kathmandu, and we're going up towards Annapurna Base. Basically, it's a Himalayan trip.
Is it going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month?
2 to 3 weeks, probably.
2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, it seems to me, from what you've told me,
Mm.
that your daughter seems to want to do a lot more travelling than the lad. Has that always been?
Yeah,
has that always been the case?
Well, she's more of a freeter than he is. He's
Hmm.
he's locked into. He runs his own football training school. He's also working for another club
Yeah.
as a coach.
So
He doesn't travel so much. Whereas my daughter tends to. She's working on a movie right now.
Yeah.
She'll finish at the end of this month, and then she's free for a while. And then she's working one of the beach houses on Zushi Beach, and then at the end of summer she'll be free again.
So she's more of the free spirit then, isn't she?
Yeah, definitely.
So after the summer, you just off you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We plan to, but before that she's got to go back to France and kind of tidy up all the loose ends in France where she was living, bring everything back to Japan. And then after that, we're planning on this Nepal trip.
Wow.
But it's uncertain.
You see, I've been away with the lad by myself.
Yeah.
I've not been away with my daughter by myself yet.
Right.
And I don't know if she'd go for it.
Well,
I don't know if she'd be up for it. I'll have
see how she. I mean, I didn't travel with my daughter independently until she was in her early 20s.
Yeah, I think that summer before she goes off to university,
right.
I'm just going to grab her for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And say, look, we're going, just me and you.
Right.
And bugger off somewhere.
That's a good way to get to know.
Yeah. Because
somebody. I mean, in any connection, whether it's a family, whether it's a relationship, traveling with somebody reveals a lot about that person. You learn a lot about them. You learn about them under stress. You learn about them in good situations and in not so good situations. It's a very good way to discover somebody.
Yeah. I know when I went with the lad was only how old would he have been? 6, 5.
Right.
When I went with him, he just lapped up everything.
Yeah.
There were no hesitation to it. When we went and walking around the jungle with the elephants, he wasn't shitting himself.
Right.
There were other kids that were there that were frightened to death.
Right.
He just got straight into it. And I don't think he'd have been the same if his mother had been there.
Right.
Because she would have been more careful about it all. Yeah. And I was just like, fuck it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
sounds like he's a natural traveller.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You've been up to Pai, haven't you?
Pai Province, North Thailand.
Yeah, north of Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
And
I know
there's
that.
Pai Canyon.
I know
Have
that.
you got
area.
Pai Canyon?
Haven't been to Pai Canyon, but I've been to the kind of. There's a lot of caving area.
Yeah.
In that.
Now, Pai Canyon is one of the most fucking dangerous places I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like it before, but it's a series of sheer drops down either side and like flat paths on the top about this wide.
Wow.
And you're just walking and looking down and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And I just had the scruff of back of Jean's neck.
Yeah.
And I said, right, just go slow and you'll be fine.
Right.
And they were off. There were no, I know if, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I know if she would have been there, like, oh, come here, and that would have put the fear in him, and he wouldn't have gone for it.
Right.
But it puts your parenting instincts on point when you take a kid to Pai Canyon.
Right.
It's so fucking dangerous.
I used to stay at a place in Pai Province called Bantum Cave Lodge.
Right.
Run by an Australian guy and his Thai wife. And a lot of hill tribes in that area. And a lot of limestone cave areas. We didn't do any caving, but we visited some of the local tribal people. It was a great place to stay.
I didn't think I would have enjoyed northern Thailand that much because when I think of Thailand, I'm just thinking of the beaches.
Yeah.
But up Chiang Mai and north of there,
I love that area.
There's no better.
I love that area.
There's no better.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Dale.
Thank you.
It's given me the. I want to get off now, but we've got the summer coming here, and what's the point?
You've got the travel bug.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to choose somewhere soon.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.